The next contemporary issue I'm going to be covering is gender inequality in sport. Gender is a huge topic in sporting in modern contemporary Britain. The first factor I'm going to cover is stereotypes in sport. In sport, there are very strong stereotypes that athletes should look a certain way and act a certain way, the norms. For example, football players, they should be seen as athletic built, attractive, they challenge people and swear. Dancers are seen as stereotypically female. If a male dances, they are given a label as gay. They're also supposed to be very skinny and pretty. On the other hand, tennis players are stereotypically seen as tall and skinny. Next, I'm going to be looking at the history of sport and if over time has this changed the gender inequality. Historically, there were very strong stereotypes. Boys would go out and play violent, more rough sports like football and rugby, whereas girls would be seen to be doing more of gymnastics and dance. It would be very difficult for boys that would want to take part in dance or gymnastics because it goes against the norms of the time and of activities that little boys would be playing. The same goes for women. If they wanted to take part in football or rugby instead of dance or gymnastics, they would have been criticised and maybe even labelled. For example, tomboy, or you kick like a girl, or you throw like a girl. I believe over the years there's been less of a divide in gender and sport, but I still definitely believe that there is inequality there. Next, I'm going to be talking about why we have stereotypes and how this impacts gender inequality. One reason I believe that we have stereotypes in sport is due to our upbringing and socialisation. For example, typically when you are younger, your parents are your primary socialisation. They give you your basic norms and values. Traditionally, the boys would go out and play football with their dad, whilst on the other hand, girls would stay in and help their mum with cooking, for example. In addition to this, stereotypically, parents seem to be more overprotective with their little girls, not wanting them to get hurt, whereas on the other hand, boys are encouraged to be more rough and take more risks. I think this immediately sets a divide between boys and girls because it makes boys think that they're stronger and more superior to girls. In addition to this, parents control a lot of what their children do and the decisions they make. For example, a dad that loves football and dreams of having a little boy to go out and share the same passion for the sport as him to then turn around and say to his dad, "No, I don't want to play football, I want to be a dancer," can be really difficult for them as a parent. This may be due to their upbringing. If their dad brought them up to be just like their father and love the same thing that he did, this may then just be the norm for him and can be difficult for him to deal with. This may lead to some children not actually being able to do the sport they love because the parents don't agree with their decisions. Because ultimately it's the parents that have to pay for their classes, get them to their club and back, and if they don't agree with it, then ultimately it isn't going to happen. However, moving on, as you grow up, your parents have less say on what you do and enjoy. You move from your primary socialisation into your secondary socialisation, for example, primary school. During this time, you're put into PE classes which are mixed, so boys and girls do the same activities and get the same opportunities. Girls would do the stereotypical boy sports and boys would do the stereotypical girl sports, e.g. dance and gymnastics. This would even include school competitions, for example, sports days where teams would be mixed boys and girls. At such a young age, we're not judgmental at all, so all can join in. I believe this is such a positive because it shows both boys and girls they can do whatever they want without being there any question. However, as you move out of primary socialisation into secondary socialisation, I believe there is a big difference and where things start to change. You are no longer in mixed groups of boys and girls and are put into girls' PE classes and boy PE classes. Not only this, but there would be a top set boys class and a top set girls class and a bottom set boys class and a bottom set girls class. Top set boys would typically play sports such as full contact rugby and football, whilst top set girls would play netball. On the other hand, bottom set boys and girls would play sports such as bench ball and activities such as trampolining. At my school, girls weren't allowed to play full contact rugby, whereas the boys were. I think that this is unfair and it creates a huge divide. I think it is completely wrong and it's already labelling children top and bottom. For example, if an 11-year-old girl who's just started secondary school has aspirations about playing for the football team and is then placed in bottom set PE, this could have real negative impacts on both her self-confidence and her aspirations. Moving on, language can have a massive impact on stereotypes. For example, phrases such as throw like a girl, kick like a girl, and tomboy. This gives a girl a male label and is making out that you are seen to be taking part in lots of sports that are considered manly, then you are automatically given a male label. Not only this, but kicking like a girl phrase is just completely undermining girls' ability to do sport in general. Next, I'm going to be relating gender inequality to football. Pay is a huge factor within football and the whole gender inequality. It was recently announced that FIFA award around 24 million to the competing teams in the women's tournament, compared to the men's team, which were awarded 350 million. This is more than 10 times as much as women. I believe this is completely unfair. Why is it that women get paid less than men for the exact same sport? I think this has a negative impact on both aspiring young footballers, especially girls. Not only this, but especially young boys, which makes it seem like they're better at the sport than girls, which just isn't the case. However, as you can see from this graph, Women's World Cup prize money is increasing, but it is still not as much as men, and this needs to be stopped. There needs to come a point where both men and women get equal pay. Sport is all about bringing people together and equality, so why should this make any difference with prize money? To summarise, I think the contemporary issue of gender inequality is still very much prominent in today's society. I think historically it was very prominent, but not as much as today's society. I think the gap is definitely getting smaller between men and women, but it definitely is still there. I think gender inequality definitely affects everyone, as people are or have been in that position at least once in their life, whether that was in PE or an outside sports club. So gender inequality definitely impacts everyone. I think the main way of trying to stop or close the gap between gender inequality is right from a young age. I think it's your parents' responsibility to make sure that it's clear that they can do whatever sport they like and anything is acceptable, right up through to secondary school. I understand that safety is definitely a factor that needs to be taken in place, but I think there definitely needs to be more on improving girls' attitudes towards sport in secondary school and getting them more involved. Because overall, sport is for everyone. Football is for boys and girls. I think we shouldn't even be questioning or discussing whether sports are stereotypically boys or stereotypically girls, because I believe that sports should be there for everyone to enjoy.